What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Conspiracy or Just a Coincidence. I am Jack Allen. First, if you haven't followed me yet, and I got a lot of new followers, so thank you. Of course, Rumble, I'm paying for you. It's not working, so we're gonna have. If you're gonna watch me on Rumble, it's not working. I'm gonna have to figure that out why that's not working. But anyway, I am Jack Allen. Go follow me at Kojak Podcast. You want to support the show? I got all my links in my Twitter. And as many of you know, my lovely wife and I are expecting our first baby. My dad listens to the show, so I cannot really reveal the gender, but I have a little we have a little baby list. So if you want to support the show, you want to buy something for baby right-wing extremist in training, I'll post the link in the show notes again. And yeah, so I ripped my past 6 weekends because Miss Livy, she switched to the weekend program. She works nights, and it made more sense with our schedules and stuff. So she works on the weekends, the nights on the weekend. So the past 6 weekends, my dad and I have been ripping out the floor, the carpet, and my wife helps when she can on the days off. And so I feel like a real man. I'm a millennial, but I did all this work. So I'm very proud of my laminate floors. I'm trying to see if I have any photos here. I took a few, and I'm gonna send them, and I'm gonna post them so you guys can see my beautiful work that I'm very, very, very proud of. So if you guys are thinking about doing laminate flooring, if you need some confidence, some boost, some all these things, confidence, support, I got. If I can do it, you can do it. So please ask me if you want any tips. Oh, here, I'm going to send this photo to myself, and my wife's not gonna be happy because I'm not a great photo taker. But anyway, Skeptic, how are you, buddy? The beacons are lit. Yes, all Kojak listeners, please join the show. We got a fun one tonight, and I'm sitting at a weird angle here. Mr. Loki's. Oh, he just left. He was sitting behind me. I couldn't get comfortable. I didn't want to sit on him, and if I try to move him, he bites me. So anyway, yeah. So you got all my links. I'll put them in the show notes. If you could just leave a review or like or subscribe or whatever, that means just as much as a financial donation. I love reading reviews. And so we've been, like I said, I got like a bunch of new followers. Owen Benjamin had a tweet about how nukes aren't real. And it's just funny how certain topics, they're so sensitive. Flat Earth, nukes. I'm trying to think what other really sensitive topics. I guess Trump a little bit. But yeah, Flat Earth, definitely. Nukes, they're not as high as Flat Earth is. Space is fake, that stuff. But it causes fights in the quote unquote research world. I don't know if you guys have witnessed those. And so they always, but anyway, so Owen retweeted how he didn't say nukes are real. He's getting pounded by all the boomers. And I retweeted, and I even had some weirdo in my chat or comments. Chaz of the Dead, or I don't even know what the hell he was such an insane person. So if you know him, maybe you know he's insane as well. I don't even know what he was saying, but he was saying how ridiculous an idea that was, and it's we've been brainwashed by World War II, especially, as you guys know. If boomers and lots of people, they maybe in their minds they've researched a lot because they watched a lot of the History Channel, World War II stuff, but there's so many lies about World War II. Like, and that's what's funny to me. People can be like, oh, well, yeah, the government's lied about 8 bajillion things. One thing that we're going to go, our topic tonight. Oh, but nukes, they would never lie about that. Sure, it generates billions of dollars in military funding a year. No, how dare you that you would lie about that? And so if you have any, I always say, I did a show here and on Sam Tripoli's show, but I won't make the claim about what they have now. I'm not smart enough. I don't understand chemistry. I've never taken a chemistry or a physics chemistry class in my life, but they did not drop nuclear bombs in World War II. that I would stand behind that claim 100 million bajillion %. So anyway, I think that was all the Tim, or if you're still in the chat, I'd be interested, dude, or Skeptic. I'm sorry. I hope I didn't just like dox you there, Skeptic. But Skeptic, what's your thoughts on that new movie that just is, what's it called? Oh my God. The child trafficking movie. What's it called? Oh my God. What's it called? With the guy that played Jesus and Mel Gibson, Jim Caviezel or whatever. Skeptic, did you see it? If you did, I'd love to hear what your opinion was. I'm not going to go see it. And then last thing before we get to this awesome topic, which it's just really, it's near and dear to my heart. That's why I love reading this. Skeptic hasn't seen it. I just was interested in your opinion, Skeptic. But Napoleon, the movie, is coming out Thanksgiving of this year. I am so excited. And so when I didn't even know this, and so I came into work, and this one guy that I work with, I call him Eeyore. He doesn't listen to the show. He's a nice guy. He seems to be very sad in life, but and he said to me, Jack, there's a Napoleon movie coming out. And I said, what? No, because I have the Napoleon Crossing the Alps. I have all old newspapers, just like in my little podcast closet here in my cubicle. And he told me that, and I was like, I said, oh no, like, what are they going to do to him? Like, what are they going to write him as? And then I heard it was from Ridley Scott, Joaquin Phoenix, they did The Gladiator. And so it looks great. And so what I found out as well is that Napoleon, this movie, was supposed to be made in 2020. They already had casting and everything like that. And because of Schmovid, it put everything on halt. So that's why it took so long. So not that 2020, there's been lots of crucial moments in life or in our history that have changed the world. Schmovid was one of them. So when I heard that, I said, oh, so there's not going to be the, diversity quotas. Though I did see somebody, and Skeptic got it. Oh, yeah, I saw your comment, Skeptic. I think I liked it at least. But there was a half black general next to Napoleon in the trailer, and someone said some asinine comment, like forced diversity quotas, and Skeptic, as he always does, came in with that's Dumas. That's Alexander Dumas's father, the guy who wrote Man in the Iron Mask, Count of Monte Cristo, if I'm not mistaken. So that's something though that I'm super excited to see, because you can't force diverse. If you want to make a real Napoleon movie, and Ridley Scott does, you can't have diversity quotas. Like they did that. I don't know if it was the BBC. They did a series or whatever on Richard the Lionheart. One of the most, Dumas was a badass dude. I don't know anything. Probably Skeptic about his father. I only know Alexander Dumas, but France did him dirty. Really? The dad or the author, Skeptic? Please, I'd love to, if you can elaborate. I would love to know. Oh my gosh, what were we just talking about? Oh boy. I don't know. We were talking Dumas in France, worried about Richard the Lionheart, one of the most famous badass individuals in the world. Pirates kidnapped his wife, and he came back to the island of either Crete or I think Acre was still controlled by the Templars at that time. But we're at one of the islands over there. They kidnapped his wife, were holding him ransom, and Richard the Lionheart said, big mistake, buddies. And he rolled up on them, got his wife back. I mean, dude, they don't make men like that anymore, right? Could you imagine? It's like the movie Taken, but a real story, dude. And anyway, so the person they had that played Richard the Lionheart was this black woman. And, that's just such a slap. It's a slap in the face to European culture, to white culture, and it's a slap in the face to African-American culture. Like, yes, their culture they didn't have many written languages. It's not as extensive as European history, but there is so much fascinating stuff that happened in Africa. Make a movie about that. Make a movie about Mansu Mansa, the allegedly the richest man the world had ever known. Is this true? I don't know. But so, he had so much gold. He crashed the market because he gave all this gold away. Make a movie about that, dude. And you couldn't imagine if you said, hey, let's put a white person as Mansu Mansa or whatever. I mean, dude, there's so many, the not that Muslims are black, but the caliphates, all these amazing other non-white amazing histories. Make an Asian movie history. Korea, Japan, fascinating histories. You can make a badass how Japan was unified movie. But so we'll see. So I'm excited. I'm very excited about the Napoleon shirt. I showed Skeptic. I bought coincidentally, the conspiracy or just a coincidence, like 2 days before I knew this was coming out, I bought a hoodie that's Napoleon's blue and white military uniform, but it's a hoodie. So my wife's gonna be thrilled when I wear that to the movie theater and just wear it around the streets. Not that anybody wouldn't even know. They wouldn't even know. I think last thing, and then we're getting into the story. When we went to go get my wife's car, I was wearing a Napoleon shirt, and the guy he's a real nice guy, young, probably my age. And I said, do you know who this is on my shirt? And he said, Paul Revere. So, I don't think most people would know, but anyway. Great Zimbabwe. Wait. Dumas' enemies called him the Black Devil. Of course they did. The father didn't want to pay his pension for didn't services rendered. Ooh, dude. Wow. And see, Skeptic, Zimbabwe, I know nothing about, but Ethiopia, I mean, dude, it's a biblical culture. There's so much stuff there. Like, just make a movie about that. It's just mind-boggling to me. But so anyway, to the topic that we're talking about today, I'll probably do 2 to 3 shows on it. We'll see. The book's amazing. The Politics of Heroin. I should always have the name of the author up, because by Alfred McCoy and Kathleen B. Reed. And boy, I read the Opium Wars book. We did that one on that relatively recently, and this just tied it all together. And I couldn't sleep last night. And I don't know if I've ever told you guys this ridiculous story, but what really got me like fully immersed into researching was when I just before woke cousins, who I just was in the group chat of being sent a video of her, she's like a dietitian, her and her colleagues at the hospital or whatever did a pride parade. She had like some stupid sign, like we all belong, like, lungs, so that's my other side of the family. But so that aunt, I just had learned about 9/11, and I was saying how 9/11 was an inside job. And this was before I knew so little. And I remember just seeing the theory that there were actually no planes that crashed into towers. And I saw the clips, and you guys have seen these clips, how they're CGI'd to shit. Half the planes inside the building, which an aluminum plane or whatever breaking through reinforced steel doesn't, but, and so I tried to show these clips, and I was just embarrassed. I was so embarrassed. I was ill prepared. And from that moment on, I made that was what lit a fire in my butt, that I will never be embarrassed like that again. And so last night I couldn't sleep, and I was pretending that if I made this claim that the CIA, the U.S. government, has been behind the international drug syndicates, and people would laugh at me. I practiced in my head for like 15 minutes how I would break it down and do that. So anyway, so let's get to the show. I'm so excited to talk about this. Ascom, one of the first Christian kingdoms. Ooh, I see. Is that, again, I have none of this, Skeptic. So thank you, dude. That's so awesome. You see, you always got the good little info. And I'm just double checking. I'm live on Twitter here. Just want to make sure we're live on Twitter, since Rumble I'm not on. All right. Yep. There's my handsome self. Okay. We're good. All right. So let's start. Let's get started. So the history of heroin. Just to start us off, in 1990, U.S. Attorney Thornburg announced a major initiative in America's war on drugs. They signed and sealed an indictment on the Prince of Death. Ugh. This opium warlord living in the jungles of Burma, getting all of the heroin, ruining America, right? He was accused of importing 3,500 pounds of heroin into New York City over 18 months. Oh, what an evil man, the Prince of Death. So what did the DEA do? Oh, they gassed up Kuhn. And, he's the king of opium. He's the most powerful drug trafficker in the world. And I always love these little stories, like this man in a third world country jungle, he's outsmarting you. The CIA with cameras everywhere, with listening to all of our devices. And I know back then there wasn't maybe cell phones, but they had plenty of other ways. You're telling me you guys couldn't stop this probably, I'd guess, barely literate third world jungle dweller? You couldn't stop him. Same way you couldn't stop Osama bin Laden, who allegedly had a mountain layer 8 levels deep with swimming pools and all this stuff. You guys have, I'm sure, seen the diagram. I just posted it, or I sent it to my friend recently. Like this Dr. Evil-esque layer. Like, oh, you couldn't outsmart a guy that's literally living in caves, communicating with carrier pigeons. He outsmarted you and NORAD. So you see these stories about these drug lords and things like that. They don't make any sense. They make zero sense. So we'll keep getting into it. So the indictment was months after H.W. Bush declared his war on drugs. In 1989, 24,000 U.S. troops invaded Panama to arrest drug lord Noriega and bring him back to Miami. And so with this, the Prince of Death, the opium warlord in Burma, the U.S. hoped for Burma's cooperation. They said, hey, come on, you guys, don't you guys want to help? Don't you guys want to help us get this evil man out? Like we needed their help, right? And but even when they so they quote unquote cooperate, I guess, and they arrest the king of opium. So that should be the end, right, guys? He's the king of opium. Did that stop all the heroin trafficking? No, it did absolutely nothing. How about when they arrested Noriega? Did that stop the cocaine trade? No, shockingly, it just increased. Oh, that's so weird how that happens, right? And the war on drugs is just like the wars, all of our wars. Fighting the best wars for the U.S. government to play on the people are what I like to call invisible wars or invisible enemy wars. So terrorists, show me a terrorist. Well, I can't point out a terrorist, right? They're only a terrorist after they quote unquote do a terrorist act. How about an invisible virus? Can you want to declare which the U.S. government has declared war on that? How do you declare war on that? Declaring a war on drugs is the exact same thing. And the next war, the invisible war, is going to be the climate. The next invisible war is going to be something else, because invisible wars are the best wars to have, because you can't pinpoint who you're fighting. And that's why everyone understands World War II, because they broke it down to a way that it's like, oh, well, we were the great guys. We just wanted people to have their freedom. This evil devil man, mustache man, he's the bad guy. Okay. So anyway, but so regardless, when you fight an invisible enemy, the war never ends, right? It never stops. And the U.S. drug policy, for, I guess, incompetence, wink, wink, not incompetence, but they failed to recognize this, that the repression of drugs for over 2 centuries, narcotics, opium, cocaine, have become major global commodities. Literally one of the only commodities that has not been susceptible to simple repression. The last 40 years, not a single policy has helped eradicate or slow down the expansion of the drug trade. So would you, if say you're in control of $40 billion a year or whatever, you're in control of the United States of America, you're in massive debt, your drug problem is just increasing tenfold. I probably mentioned Kensington, where I used to cop drugs in Philadelphia, and you may have seen clips of it. I mean, it's a zombie land. These people they're doing the nods out, or they're barely standing, they're falling over. It's only gotten worse these last 4 years. So what is our drug policy besides just spending boatloads of cash, militarizing the police? They've done nothing. They've done nothing. Oh, and I'm sorry, I'm just reading this. Skeptic said invaded Afghanistan and opium production went up. Exactly. Pot calling the kettle black. What's up, Annika? And the U.S. government is one of the largest drug cartels on the planet. Bingo. And we're going to get into all of it. I'm going to explain it in such a clear way. Like I said, I practiced last night at 1:30 when I couldn't fall asleep, and we're going to explain all of this very easily so that you guys can understand and explain to other people. If you say this to your whoever, you'll be able to just destroy them. You will eviscerate their notions of what the drug war is. So the social history of heroin. So this is important, okay? So drugs have played a major role in human history for thousands of years, right? Alcohol, kava leaf, tobacco, marijuana, peyote, opium, coca, which would become, the coca leaf, cocaine, were all used by their local populations for thousands of years. Alexander the Great talks about it. One of those ancient Socrates or one of those they talk about. I mean, it's been gone. They've talked about opium forever. Guys, forever. Were there tons of addicts then? No, there weren't. Wonder why that is, huh? It's weird, right? Probably, maybe a lot of alcoholics. We can maybe make that claim, but no, there wasn't junkies, lying. Not yet, anyway. Not in ancient times, at least. But once prohibition took hold, the powerful families, the powerful members of society, were able to use this prohibition to become rich and corrupt, manipulate governments. So the poppy plant had been traded across Asia for over a millennium. It appears in ancient Assyrian, Egyptian, Greek, Roman, all the way to the Bronze Age. And by 1996, 96% of the world's 2,800,000 hectares, which is, I think, 100 acres. So a shit ton of land, 2,800,000 of these hectares. What is a hectare? Come on. I don't know. So I don't want to give you wrong. What is a hectare? A hectare is, it looks like it's 100. It's 100. A hectare is 100 acres. So a lot, right? That's a shit ton. So what? 2.8 million acres of land people were growing opium on. Isn't that crazy? The U.S. government, largest drug cartels on the planet. Oh, yeah, I just read that. Yes. I noticed how many street addicts seem to be white people in the cities nowadays. Bigger than an acre. Yeah. And yeah, Carl, absolutely. And dude, and I'm sure you guys know a few parts of this, but I'll just keep going here. Opium. Blah, blah, blah. And so the poppy plant had been traded across Asia for over a millennium and appears in ancient Assyria. Oh my gosh, I already said this. Acres. So all this, the 2,800,000 hectares of illicit opium was still found in this Asia known as the Golden Triangle, which was Burma, Thailand, and Laos, as opposed to the Golden Crescent of heroin, which was Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Iran. Some interesting areas here, guys, right? Thailand, Laos, Burma. We were doing something there in the 60s. It was right next to Vietnam. Sure, no relation to that. And, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Iran. Vietnam War ended. Where did we go next? Those areas. I'm sure conspiracy or just a coincidence. And the coca bush had a similar history to Asia with opium in South America. Just shorter history, obviously, the New World, blah, blah, blah. For 100 years, though, it was a legal commodity. And then in the 1980s, it became illegal. So basically, after seeing how well opium making it illegal worked, they said, let's do it again. They said, clearly this is working, right? We're doing great here. So let's do it the same thing with cocaine. And because it's not about stopping the drug usage at all, but rather it's how do we extract what we want to self-enrich at the turmoil of others or at the peril of others? Well, they don't care about us. We all know this. But that's what prohibition was about. It wasn't pushed through to the point of the extent or the area it's at now because they care about you and they're worried about the population. This is obvious, right? That's not what prohibition is about. It's about when you make something illegal and you control the laws, well, you just made yourself a monopoly, buddy. No one's going to stop you. And we're going to see who's going to capitalize on that law, that rule, the way that worked. And so opium was the progenitor. It was a commodity. It was a commodity, and its history laid the foundations for the modern drug trade, both commercial and criminal. And its later prohibition created with enforcement agencies and other criminal networks. And opium's history spans nearly 5,000 years. So primarily, it was traded locally, primarily until the 17th century when European merchants discovered the commercial potential. And this would create one of the most lucrative trade triangles the world had ever witnessed. So the Portuguese, they were the first to get in the opium trade from India to China. Then they either got kicked out, lost power. They got replaced by the Dutch. Dutch get kicked out, and the British come in. And the British, now they make the moves on this, right? They increase shipment sizes. They promote amounts used each year. They're kind of using slave labor in India to help produce more and more opium, leading to rapid growth year after year after year after year. And this rapid growth led to a law in 1729 in China to curb usage because India's growing the opium, Britain's taking the opium, selling it to China. And I'm sure there's a reason. I'm going to get to that reason why. If not, I'll give you the reason late in a second here, but I just don't have to repeat myself multiple times. So China makes a law to curb usage. What do you guys think happened? Think it worked? Think that slowed usage? Shocker, it didn't. But you know what it did do? It created more profit. Usage grew. And in the 18th century, the opium trade exploded. Not just opium, caffeine, nicotine, etc. All these drugs, legal and illegal drugs exploded in the 18th century. Spanish, they had a monopoly on tobacco trade in the Philippines. British had a monopoly in opium trade in Asia. And these merchants, they used these commodities, transforming from luxury goods to commodities of mass consumption and integral to the economies of both nations, right? So basically, I guess I don't have this in my notes. The reason why Britain got so involved in the opium trade was they loved tea. The populace was addicted to tea. The populace loved silk. They loved all these fancy products China was making. Well, China only accepted silver for these luxury items. What does that do? Well, that's removing all the silver out of Britain, and they're getting it nothing back. So how do we get that silver back, baby? Let's sell heroin, opium, to the Chinese, and we're going to only take silver. So 1773 is when opium totally exploded. And that's when the British East India Company became the colonial ruler of Bengal and in Northeast India, creating a monopoly on production, sale of opium. And using India's opium for China tea exports, 75 tons in 1776 to 3,200 tons of opium in 1850. So within 80 years, 75 tons to 3,200 tons. I mean, that's a shit ton of opium. And like I said, China banned opium completely in the 1790s. So they did it in 1729, usage skyrocketed. 1790, they made even a harsher rule. Did that curb usage? No, continued to skyrocket. And 1839, British, they start a war because China, they didn't want the opium. Britain's using this free trade morality standpoint to say, oh, this is so this is what freedom is, free trade. And so, China's populace is just destroying itself. I think some absurd number, 20% were addicted to opium. I mean, that's insane, guys. 20% of your populace is addicted to opium. Horrible, dude. Not a good civil. You're not going to last long when you have that large of a percentage who can't function daily without opiates. So we said 1839, and then there was so after the first Opium War, China conceded some things like, okay, you can only sell them here, here, here. Then 1850, another false flag event. The British said they burned a British flag, or they seized a British ship. Wasn't a British ship, it was a Chinese ship. They lied about this. It was a false flag event, just like all of our wars. And that popped off the second Opium War. So Britain essentially fought two wars to force China's hand to rescind its opium ban. And by 1900, China's population of 400 million, 13.5 million were opium addicts who consumed, I mean, this is just insane, guys, 38,000 tons of opium annually. And China produced 85% of their own opium. That is so, I can't do the math in my head, but if you have 13 million addicts consuming 38,000 tons of, I mean, that's what I don't want to sound silly, at least a pound of opium per person, right? At least 1 in 5 hooked on opium. Thank you for doing the math. It's insane, guy. It was insane. I mean, China was just ravaged, dude. It was ravaged. So you can, and I don't fall for the the Chi-Coms versus the West. I think they're all on the same side. But by some chance, if I'm wrong on that theory, you can see why China has zero issue shipping fentanyl to the Mexican cartels that are going to dump it into America. Because if I was the president of a country who was subvertively had a war, drug war placed on them for 150 years, decimating my populace, I'd want some payback too. Just like the Crusades. If your wives were being raped, your daughters were being raped, your sons were being slaughtered, your land was being salted, they stole your crops, all these things, the Muslims, for 300 years. Well, I would say the Crusades were 100% justified, because you stole a third of Christian land and did unspeakable atrocities. Not that the Crusaders didn't do these same unspeakable atrocities, but history likes to point that the Crusades were these, they just attacked them. No, it was after 300 years of being being sold into slavery, like I said, sexually assaulting women, raping wives, etc., etc. Okay. And so then usage would spread from Asia to Europe as it become more and more commoditized, specifically after, and guys, this story just gets even crazier. So I hope this part's exciting for you guys, because just like the next parts are going to just make everything make perfect sense, and they're going to blow your mind. Like I said, I mean, this subject is near and dear to my heart, but it's going to blow your mind. So it eventually spread to Europe as it became more commoditized, and it became mass produced by pharmaceutical companies. No, they care about your health, and they made morphine from the opium, and then eventually heroin. Merck, you may have heard of Merck. They're known for their wonderful drugs. They're many vaccines. They care about you. They care about you. They celebrated Pride Month. They do pride walks. They do charity work. They care about you guys, just like they did when they started in the 1900s. And so Merck, they were one of the first manufacturing companies that would commercially manufacture morphine starting in 1827, but it wouldn't become popular until 1860s once they created the hypodermic needle. And 1874, heroin was created, and it was showed to be even more powerful. And a company, you may have heard of them. I don't know. They're called Bayer. Have you guys heard of Bayer? They own Monsanto, the company that produces GMO foods that have been poisoning us for the last 50 years, causing the huge spike in low testosterone. 20% of the younger generation is identifying as homosexual. Cancer rates through the roots, autism rates through the roots. I'm sure it has nothing to do with GMOs. Well, now I got to take this off YouTube. Damn it. Well, we'll see. I think that was okay. What do you guys think? You think that's all? You think that's all right? And Carl said, one can still grow poppies. There are folks who do it right now on small scale in the gardens. Carl, correct me if I'm wrong. Thank you, Mouse. I appreciate it. Carl, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe, though, that the poppy plants in America, they're GMO'd, that they do not produce opium in their bulbs. I'm pretty sure that, unless you get like seeds, maybe I'm sure it's possible to get seeds from the Middle East or from Asia. But I remember reading that was that you like because it's a normal flower, the poppy flowers. So but none of them produce opium. So Carl, maybe you know that better than I do. Amit, what's going on, buddy? If you guys don't listen to good old Amit, check out his podcast. Amit's a great, great guy, friendliest man in the world. He's a cat dad like myself. Cat dads stick together. I saw some guy tweet who I like. He was on my show, Jared something. And he tweeted it was like a picture, that the meme of like the guy standing up in the crowd. He's kind of like a cartoon. And, people just like make up something what he said. And his tweet was, real men don't own cats. And I wanted to say, I like the guy, so I'm just slightly joking. But I wanted to say, let's do it. Let's compare who can squat, deadlift, bench more. And we'll say who, and you, if you can outbeat me, then I will allow that statement to stand that real men don't have cats. If you can't, then who's the real vagina, Jared? All right. You tell me. All right. So don't talk about cats, and cats are amazing. Many varieties do produce opium, Jack. So Carl, there are, if I found a natural poppy plant in the wild, in the forest, there's a chance that produces opium. And I'm sure you're right, Carl. I don't know why I think this, but I just like remember reading this, that the poppy seed, like if I went and I know for a fact, if I went to the store and bought like poppy seeds what's the flower that poppies grow? My God, I can't even think of it. But those ones will not produce opium, Carl. Please, and if I would, much more than I do, Carl. So I would love, please correct me if I'm wrong on that. My dog Charlie here is barking. Who knows what he wants? He wants some opium, I guess. Okay, Bayer. Oh, and then continuing, let's go back to Bayer, the lovely Bayer Pharmaceutical Company. They began their mass production of heroin, and they started promoting heroin as it's heroin because it's called heroin because heroin, a hero. It's a magical drug. I think heroin's a woman hero. Well, that's why it got its name. And Bayer would promote heroin as a non-addictive drug for all adult and infant ailments. Huh. Now, wait a second. Bayer said heroin was not addictive because morphine was addictive. People could understand that at the time, but heroin was not. Now, wait. Did this just happen? Huh. For some reason, I'm thinking of this company, Purdue Pharmaceuticals. who made Oxycontins, they didn't say the same thing, did they? No, they didn't say that it wasn't addictive, right? And then they were paying doctors millions of dollars and making fun of all the quote unquote hillbilly heroin addicts that were addicted to their pills. No, that didn't happen before, did it? Oh, wow. That's so weird. That's so interesting how that happened, right? Just okay. But now here it gets really good here. You can buy them through the mail. Got it, Carl. So not naturally growing in the United States, I'm guessing. Again, Carl, please. I could be like so wrong. I just like, during my heroin day, I just remember watching lots of documentaries and the idea obviously crossed my mind. Should I just grow my own opium plants? But anyway, so you're going to see so many similarities between then and now. So anyway, let's continue going. I'm sorry. I keep getting sidetracked. But Bayer's success, and Merck's success encourage other companies to obviously try and get in on the opium game, promoting heroin as this cure-all, better than that stupid, addictive, evil morphine. And this went hand in hand. Cocaine was Merck created cocaine. Merck, the pharmaceutical company, created cocaine. They were the ones that created cocaine. And that was in the 1850s. And it was a popular cure-all as well. I mean, Coca-Cola was putting actual cocaine in their drinks until 1903. And that wasn't that long ago, 120 years ago. And the Park Davis company, now Park Davis, would eventually become Pfizer, just so you're aware. Park Davis Company of Detroit, they produced cocaine cigarettes, ointments, and sprays. Now, that would be cool. If anybody if you have maybe a great grandfather's house that's a pack rat, that was a smoker, get in that house and go look for Park Davis cocaine cigarettes, ointments, or sprays, because that sounds awesome. I mean, dude, you're tired, nicotine, it gives you a little buzz, but waking up, imagine taking a cocaine cigarette break. Now that would get you working hard. That's how you get your industrial revolution, your post-industrial revolution slave labor you got going on. That's how you get them to work real good. Give them some cocaine cigarettes, give them some heroin towards the end of the day. Boom, you got workers that are they may nod off and lose a hand? Possible. Give them give them more heroin. Problem solved. Coke cigs, Zoom, right? Isn't that crazy, Carl? I mean, I told my friend that. We were dying laughing when we heard that. And drugs became so popular in this time, in the 1800s, early 1900s. Why? Because they worked. People were leaving the countryside, flooding the industrialized cities, which were disgusting. Windowless shacks of families of 12. This is why disease was rampant. This is why cholera and all these diseases that were supposedly totally stopped because of, and if you're not watching, you're just listening, I'm putting a gesture on my shoulder. And I think you guys can understand what this means. So that's what they attribute to the decrease of diphtheria, cholera, massive diarrhea issues, was because of these, me smacking my shoulder. It had nothing to do with the fact that at that exact same time that these things became prevalent and utilized, I'm sure that had nothing to do with the fact that they just now installed underground plumbing, realized, oh, you can't drink the same river that you have farm animals shitting and pissing in. You're going to get sick, right? So, yeah, I'm sure. And I did a show on that very, very early in my podcast career, if you want to listen to it. And I can even get you the book title if you want, but it's a scam. It's a scam. It's a scam. This was, they use that as a lie because already as you can see, the pharmaceutical industry has so much power, is making so much money. So you could see why would we say, oh no, it's actually the clean water you now finally have, and the sunlight and the labor restrictions you have and the clean food you're eating. That's what's causing you not to have cholera and all these horrible, diseases. No, it's not that, guys. You could have kept sleeping next to the pigs and drinking their poop water. But because of this, my shoulder hit. That's why all these things just stopped all of a sudden. Yep, I am sure. I'm sure. But so all these people, they're leaving their farms, right? They're going into the city, and the working demands were completely changing. And not that these small farm serfs and peasants or what have you, they had very hard work. It was very demanding work. On the flip side of that, though, these people worked, and the statistic, I'm very close on this if it's not exact, worked 1/3 of the days that you and I as regular Americans work today. 1/3. The peasants of the Middle Ages. They had meat 4 to 5 times a week. They had parties all the time. And like I said, they worked 1/3 of they worked 100 days out of the year, as opposed to us who work, a million. We work forever, right? We literally work to live. My colleague, he's got 3 kids. For daycare, it cost him $4,800 a month to put them in daycare. And he doesn't make a ton of money. So basically, he's working to pay for his kids to go to daycare. That's how screwed up our system is. But yeah, so worker demands are changing. They're leaving their small farms into this industrial towns where you're working 12-hour shifts. You're working in coal mines. You're working in back-breaking labor in horrible, unsanitary conditions. So caffeine, cocaine, cigarettes, heroin, they're going to help you get through that day, right? It's not easy to work 12-hour back-breaking work shifts sober. Not an easy thing to do at all. I can imagine this isn't too hard to believe. And so eventually, though, this would turn into the 12-hour shifts, the constant movement, performance. England's per capita sugar intake jumped 4-fold from 20 to 80 pounds from 1850 to 1900. Tea went from 2 to 6 pounds in the same time frame. Coffee, same thing, jumped 500%. Opium in 1850, it was averaging 12 grains per person. I don't know what a grain of opium is, but it would shoot up to 52 grains per person in 1896. There was 313,000 opium addicts that lit in the United Kingdom alone, taking the quote unquote Victorians aspirin. And shockingly, this is not the case in this day and age, but at this point in time, there were more women addicts than men. And why is this? Because men, they would go to the pub with their boys where women usually weren't allowed. So they were just more alcoholics. Their wives are at home. They have a hectic schedule with the kids and cooking and cleaning and all this stuff like that. And they were lonely. So what did they do? They would go to the corner store. They'd buy a bottle of heroin, and that makes your day a whole lot different. We'll say that. It's legal. It's, it's like getting a beer. So you can see why. But I just found that so fascinating, right? That more women addicts in the heyday of the legal opium than male addicts. I just found that funny or interesting. But regardless, the global drug trade, meats, exotic fruits, getting fruits that not exotic fruits that you aren't in your country, et cetera, clothing, commodities. This was all tea, coffee. This wasn't this international trade wasn't started because people wanted exotic fruits. It was built because the infrastructure was built off of the international opium drug trade. I think cocaine is still used in the medical field. It's used to numb the nose. It's called them black beauties. I know ketamine's used. I could yell to my wife here, skeptic. Let me hear. I'm going to yell. All right. So Liv hasn't given anyone cocaine yet. That's because she puts it in her pocket and brings it home to me. No, but But no, I've seen Skeptic that's still in use in some cases. But anyway, so yeah, so opium built the international trading system. That started globalization, the opium trade. And that may be a hard pill for people to swallow. That is literally what built the globalization of international trade. Okay, now this is one of my favorite parts of the whole show. Listen to this, guys. Oh my gosh. Listen to this. So, okay, we're in the late 1800s, early 1900s America and Britain. Opium, everyone's an addict, right? You can just get it at your corner store. You don't need a prescription. You don't need, no side glances. This is a cure-all. It's a miracle drug. And so there was these things called patent medicine dealers. They were opium dealers. But basically, these were the snake oil salesmen that you hear from, that phrase is used all the time, right? You know what a snake oil salesman is. So these snake oil salesmen, they would use always heroin and then some other concoction and, Mr. Jack Allen's perfect cure-all medicine. All right. And I'd patent this drug, I'd patent this thing so nobody else could steal my secret formula. And then what would I do? Well, then I would pay for an advertisement in the newspaper. Now, guys, just think about this. Yes, Annika, they started absolutely 100 bazillion percent. So, okay, so I'm a newspaper in this time period. Heroin's everywhere. I got all these patent companies. Well, now you guys want to take a guess? Who was the largest advertiser in the mainstream press during this time period? Oh no, you're not going to tell me it was the snake oil sale patent opium dealers, were you? Oh, it was? No way. Well, we definitely learned our lesson from that, right? Because they were paying, they were the largest advertisers, so the newspapers never wrote any articles about how heroin actually is addictive. Oh wait, no, that didn't just happen in our mainstream news media, right? Who's their largest advertisers? Oh, pharmaceutical companies? Oh, wow, that's so weird how that happened, right? Oh my gosh. That's just so crazy. So if the reason why the newspapers in the 1900s weren't writing the truth about heroin addiction for these patent medicines, we with our progressive society, our trustworthy news would do that for pharmaceutical companies, right? Their largest advertisers. I rolled for people just listening. And thank you. That's so nice of you to say, Ashley. I appreciate. Thank you for stopping in. Rockefeller's grandfather was a literal snake oil salesman. And I'd be interested, skeptic. I was reading it was like the history of Standard Oil, skeptic. It was like a book from like the 1900s. It was a lady who wrote the book. And maybe it's called The History of Standard Oil, but I didn't get to that part. So I'd be interested, skeptic, what like if he, not if his quote unquote snake oil contained, heroin or opium in him, because if it did, it really makes perfect sense of how his grandson, John D. Rockefeller, would create the modern medical system if he saw his grandfather utilizing the same techniques of silencing the press, bribing the press to push your product. But so I'd be interested, skeptic, maybe you know that. I'd be interested to hear. So isn't that just hilarious though? It's just history rhymes. And I always say this, but it's just the same exact thing. So the same point stands today. The press didn't comment then on the skyrocketing addiction rates due to the massive heroin consumption in our country. Do they do that now? And if they do, who do they blame? Do they blame, maybe they'll blame Purdue Pharma. Do they blame the Sackler family who owned Purdue Pharma? Do they blame all of the pharmaceutical industrial complex for addicting America on more drugs and pills than you could imagine? Or do they blame it on on the drug cartels or on China? That's who they blame it on. And you'll see boomers, oh, China's getting back at us with the fentanyl. Okay. Well, we'll break that. We'll ruin that theory for you very quick here. And so the patent medicine trade grew into a $250 million industry by 1900. In today's money, easily over $10 billion. $10 billion. They were being, at least, I don't know what I could do the conversion, but it's probably even more than that. So we'll say $30 billion. $30 billion were being made a year off of selling heroin in snake oil in the US, thanks to the silence and the complicity of the press. And now everyone you'd think would just be getting high and chilling, right? Like we're all high on heroin. We don't want the party to end, so let's keep it rolling. What's the problem? And well, I'll tell you what happened. What happened was religious Christians and the prohibition movement, they had to ruin the fun, and a change was about to come. So the global prohibition movement, it began in the 1870s. This is when Protestant churches of England and America were doing their whole "I'm more holier than thou," because slavery had just ended. And so these people, they needed a new crusade. Opium was the infidel. This is just like our woke libs of today, right? The battle was COVID. Then the battle was Trump. Then the battle was COVID. Then the battle is now what? Climate, Ukraine, Russia. Everything's going to be the end of the world. And so this was their new fight. This is their new virtue signal, how we're better than you because we want to stop this evil trade. And it was an evil trade. Absolutely. I don't think they knew that they were falling in line of exactly what the power of the bankers wanted to happen. But regardless, the prohibition movement really started taking off in the 1870s. And then in 1899, I have this newspaper actually, United States purchased the Philippines from Spain after the concession of the Spanish-American War. And this was in 1899. So 7,000 islands, 6 million Filipinos. And what else was grown there besides tobacco? Oh, no, not too much. Besides that, they had a state opium monopoly. Lucky pickup there by the U.S. And I will not make the claim that opium and heroin has been behind every single war, but it is in the top 3 reasons of why and where and what locations our wars took place since World War One, two. I'll say World War II. So the Filipino opium monopoly sold 130 tons of opium in 1902 to Chinese opium dens. Now, usually America never says no to money, but this is before the Fed, right? We still have honest people in politics in the early 1900s. 1913 was when America was crucified. But in 1902, you still had honest people that did want to do the right thing, right? These people weren't evil people. And so you had some of the top, the 1%, they wanted illegal for a different reason than what the nice, kind, moral people wanted to be illegal for. And so they think they're on their side, but they're not, right? That makes sense. So, Charlie, what are you doing? And so the U.S., they install a missionary bishop to investigate the opium inner workings in 1903. And within 5 years, the U.S. outlawed all opium smoking in the Philippines. And at this moment, so in 1907, 1908, this is the beginning of the drug war in America. In 1909, a bill was passed that you couldn't smoke opium anymore. Then in 1912, it restricted all non-medical usages of opium. And then in 1914, the Harrison Narcotics Act was passed, which required doctor prescriptions to purchase narcotics. And this was before, I highly recommend reading Rockefeller Medicine Men, or just listen to my series I did on it. But back then, this was before the medical community was completely controlled, ran by Rockefellers, oil chemical, pharmaceutical based medical practice. So there was a lot of doctors that didn't fall in line. They believed if you want opium, I'll write a prescription. So even in 1914, you had dope doctors, just like you had in 2008 before, it was really cracked down on the pill mills in Florida and all. I mean, I knew people, they would fly to Florida with thousands of dollars. They had 20 doctors they'd hit. They'd pick up in the hundreds of thousands of Oxycontins and Oxycodones. They'd fly them back or drive them back up to Philadelphia. And I mean, dude, this was how that's what started me, was oxycodones. This was how you got them. When there was crooked doctors in Philly, there were crooked doctors everywhere. You would go to the doctor, with like the lowest rating. There was cash only. I remember there was a guy in rehab. He went to this doctor in Pittsburgh who he eventually got caught. He wrote over this is going to sound over like 10 million. He prescribed over 10 million oxycodone pills, over like 8 million Xanax 2 milligram bars, which is the highest dosage of Xanax at the same time to people. The same time, like that's a recipe for overdose. He would eventually be arrested as well, but tons of the people in my rehab went to this doctor. Dope doctors. So there was this one dope doctor in New York City who wrote 68,000 grains of heroin, 54,000 grains of morphine, and 30,000 grains of cocaine. But within 4 years, the U.S. indicted all these dope doctors between 1919 and 1922 that really transformed the prohibition into an actually regulated prohibition. And continuing with this trend, the Volstead Act, many of you I'm sure have heard of the Volstead Act, which was passed in 1919, which was the alcohol ban, which established a prohibition unit to implement the ban, and it separated the narcotic division for the Harrison Act. Yes, Ashley, you are correct. There is a 3 milligram Xanax tablet. What are it? Triangles? I thought they weren't as common, but you're right. I stand corrected. I remember they were green, I think, right? Correct me if I'm wrong there. But let me just read Skeptics. If you saw the movie Pulp Fiction, the heroin Kit Kat that John Travolta uses was an antique heroin quit that used to be able to be bought in a Sears catalog. What? And then Rockefeller's granddad was also a bigamist and possible racist. Pulitzer offered money for dirt on him, but no one could find him until a couple of years after William Avery Rockefeller Sr. died. Always. Skeptics always got the heat. But yes, I'm sorry. You are very right, AD. There is a 3 milligram Xanax tab. Hilarious. I see your benzodiazepines very well. Very good. But yeah, so 1919. So all right. So we're setting this up here. So you've had 200 years of opium, drugs, alcohol being traded as legal commodities, as things that are making people millionaires. The Taft family, which Howard Taft, the VP, was he president ever? I think he was president too. He was in the Philippines during this exact time. The Russell family, the Roosevelt family, but I believe it was Russell and Taft families that created a lovely secret society known as the Skull and Bones with their opium money. Or why don't we just go to John F. Kennedy's family, Joseph Kennedy? How did he become a millionaire? It wasn't opium, but he was a bootleg alcohol smuggler that would eventually become a dominant family of politics. So anybody that ever says to you, no, the American government would never sell drugs, just throw out those names. Say, have you ever heard of the Roosevelt family? Have you ever heard of the Russell family? Have you ever heard of the Taft family? Well, they built their fortunes on heroin. So you're wrong immediately, and we'll continue proving you why you are so wrong as we continue to go on here. So in 1923, though, this would finalize the launch of the narcotic division. This was the first U.S. drug enforcement agency against the dope docs and heroin dealers. And more legislation will continue as the years continued, though the opium, but so you would think, okay, opium's going to slow down, right? Oh, shockingly, the opium monopolies didn't stop. Did they reduce opium sales? They did do that by 65% in 15, or yes, they reduced opium sales as more legislation passed by 65% in 15 years. Was this the illegal opium sales it reduced? No, it was the snake oil salesman. That's why opium sales reduced 65%, because now your little housewife, she's not going to go into New York City, who's, not really allowed to like talk to men, and go meet up with Lucky Luciano to pick up a dime bag. Right. So that's why it dropped. It wasn't this immediate success because of all this prohibition wasn't because of prohibition. It was because now you're removing a once legal product and making it into a black market. So what have we learned? If you had a commodity, you're making millions on it already. You have a commodity, you own a monopoly on it. Well, if you make it illegal, groups, people, they will find the void. They'll fill that void to get that product to you. And it's like kind of like Newton's gravity law or whatever that, so each action produced has an equal and opposite criminal reaction in this sense. So if you put a major prohibition on heroin, you're going to have the alternative, you're going to have a major spike in heroin production. If you're going to have a major eradication event, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, burning crops, et cetera, is that the end of opium? No, they're going to now be craftier, plant more under more cover in different areas, and more would produce. And we're going to see that this is exactly what happens. So the League of Nations, they banned opium fully in 1925. Shanghai, they were one of the major centers for illicit heroin. So heroin production, they supplied 80% of New York City's heroin. And so even though the legality may have changed, the addicts didn't just disappear overnight. And they're about to, though. And we're going to see about this. Exactly. Nature abhors a vacuum, supply and demand. Exactly. So as prohibition drove the new alcohol and drug trades, localized gangs, shocker, started growing. And post-World War II, the foundation had been set. Organized crime was here to stay. So the drugs were still grown in rural villages in Asia and other third world countries, and they were using violence, bribery, just like how the criminal syndicates of America were able to sell their product. And by the 1920s, they changed drugs, crime, etc. After the legally traded good opium for 200 years was made illegal, after making many American families rich, now illegal, it's just a new group that's going to take over this money-making commodity. So with all these government agencies going after drugs, alcohol, you might be shocked to hear what's going to happen. Shockingly, criminal syndicates that are growing start working with what? Government agencies? People are so greedy and so corrupt and use whatever justification possible to justify their actions. But post-World War II, we had a new enemy, baby, communism. And the communists, they took power in China in 1949, launched a huge anti-opium campaign, which culminated in 1952. They identified 369,000 opium traffickers. They made 82,000 arrests. They imprisoned 35,000 opium users, dealers, consumers, whatever. They publicly executed 880 opium drug lords. But the harsh penalties worked. Opium, which riddled the country for over 2 centuries, which ruined this beautiful major superpower, which literally eviscerated this country, was drug-free by the mid-1950s. Also, closing former trade routes, grow-ops in China, right? You think, oh, heroin's going to stop. Like I said, 80% of Americans' heroin was coming from China. China's not making heroin anymore. So it's going to stop, right? But just like our Newton's law, that just means new trade routes need to be opened. New grow ops need to be started in new areas. And that's exactly what happened. And these new growers, smugglers, they don't have the infrastructure that the Chinese had. They don't have the funding. They don't have the protection. They don't have the guns. I mean, this is post World War II. Chaos wreaked all over Europe, right? So they're going to need a little help. They're going to need a little help. Now, who's going to be there to help get these guys started up? Angel investors, also known as the OSS. You may have heard of them. They would eventually turn into the CIA. And these and the U.S. with under covert operations provided protection for the major traffickers within the Asian opium zone, and this was done by the creation of the CIA in 1947 under President Truman. So the CIA, since China's out of the picture, CIA helped Turkey's opium grow up, which would then send it to Iran, which would then send it west to Marseille's heroin labs ran by the Corsican Mafia, and opium growing popped up in the Middle East and Southeast Asia. Totally coincidentally, folks. I know where your stupid conspiracy minds are going. The CIA fighting communism in the same exact areas where opium production was popping up? Yes. Okay. In Vietnam, in Laos, in the 60s. Okay. Yes. And in Afghanistan in the 80s and the 2000s. But stop, guys. This is just by chance. No, we were fighting for democracy, guys. It didn't hurt that mass opium farms were in these locations, but that wasn't it was communism. Come on, get it through your head. Come on, get your head out of the gutter here. And so eventually the CIA created what was known as Operation Gladio, which was they were going to sell drugs to fight communism. They were going to do this by supporting local warlords, drug smugglers to help fund the fight against the communists. For example, Burma's opium production, they had nothing. They had the land, they had the poppies, but they had no finance. They had no logistics. They had no protection. Well, who's got all three of those things? Well, there's a great group called the CIA. They provided Burma the air logistics with their planes. They provided military protection. So no, FDA, whatever, no other Burma police are going to run up on them. And they gave them the financial support. The same exact reason why opium exploded in Afghanistan in the 1980s. Support from who? Oh, well, the Pakistani CIA. Who created that? The United States CIA. And the Bank Credit Commerce International, BCCI, one of the major banks in today's day and age, provided the funding for the growth of opium in Afghanistan. So the CIA and drug dealers were natural partners. Why were they natural partners? Because they were both enemies of communism and quote unquote fascism. And this sounds reasonable. This sounds great. If you in your mind, communism is the ultimate evil, which it is a horrible, godless, disgusting. It is promoting the weak. It's spitting in the face of natural hierarchies that have been present, that have built civilization for thousands of years. And that's life, right? If you got a bad phenotype or a bad, physiognomy or whatever the word is, you look like a soy boy. Yeah, I'm sorry, you're lower on the totem pole, dude. That's life. You're not the smartest guy in the world. You're a janitor. There's nothing wrong with that. You should be proud that you can support your family. That's where I lean, more national socialist in that kind of regards. I believe anyone working a 40-hour week deserves a livable salary that they can go on vacation with, that they can support their family with, that as they did in America for, post World War II. But this isn't why they paired together. This wasn't, it wasn't an honest fight, right? It wasn't an honest fight. So so instead of stopping drug trafficking, the CIA aided and abetted. They turned the other way, or would even block investigations that got too close to other groups within the U.S. government finding out about the CIA's inner workings. I mean, the CIA, as you know, literally have overthrown what, over 80 governments. They've created wars. They've created murders, mass murders. I always bring up Guatemala. 1.5 million of a 4 million population country was murdered because the CIA installed a dictator to get rid of a quote unquote communist leader who was not a communist. He was a nationalist, and he was tired of seeing his people who were working at the banana wars in Guatemala for the United Fruit Company, who was tired of seeing his countrymen being chained up to work on pennies when they couldn't afford anything, but that's why, that's what the CIA does. They protect their banksters. They protect their Wall Streeters. They protect their Zionists. That's what they do. I mean, the CIA literally created warlords, continued to flow of opium. And of course, the media, opium, it just keeps skyrocketing. If it would ever mention that in the news, it would obfuscate and say, oh no, it's not, it's just that these little fightings of these little third world neighborhoods, that's what's creating these drug warlords. And okay, kinda, yeah, that's not entirely incorrect, but it's more like these warlords are created because they're fighting over the massive influx of cash being dropped into their country because the CIA is bringing it in. And then the CIA they'll tell you, you just got to control the opium production. You got to make this much. We'll fly it out. We'll keep you guns. We'll keep you safe. And you just got to kill some commies along the way. And we want your drugs. In Burma in the 1950s, opium production rose 18 tons after the CIA got involved. It rose another 600 tons by 1970 after the CIA was there for 20 years. For 20 years. Oh, they just couldn't stop it. That's not stopping it. You increased it tenfold. What do you mean? And you're going to and someone's going to try and debate me and say, no, this is true. The CIA, no, they were trying to stop. Then how were they if they're that inept at their job? If you were a nurse and your first year you got out of nursing school, you killed 2 patients. Okay. They weren't totally your fault. On your 15th year, if you're now killing 50 patients in a year, you're going to be fired. Somebody's going to say to you, what the F what are you doing? We are giving you more money, more education, more experience, and you're killing more people. What is going on? But in the CIA's logic, the media doesn't report on it because they own the Washington Post. They're not going to report on it. Go check out my Washington Post episode if you want to learn more about that. Oh, let's do Afghanistan. In 1971, Afghanistan was producing 2,000 tons of opium. CIA gets involved. Wars start happening. Well, in 1991, how many tons of opium do you think they made then? So they went from 2,000 tons to 4,600 tons. So they doubled, more than 100% increase in opium production. But yet nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody thinks about this. They just say, oh, it's just because these evil Talibans that are growing. Oh, really? That's weird because opium production decreased when the Taliban or Al-Qaeda took power pre-2001 after we overthrew somebody. Opium production nearly stopped. And then what happened? Oh, it got to record low opium production in Afghanistan. Well, the CIA needs their cash crop, buddy. So what do? Oh, coincidentally, the Saudi Arabians who weren't Afghani or Iranians or whatever, they hijacked planes in America, left New York, brought them back, and crashed into the Twin Towers. They must have been mad that the opium production was getting so low in their ultra religious Orthodox community. Or what's more likely, maybe some Zionists were pulling some strings there, most likely. And then a decade after the official end of the Cold War, the CIA had three main covert battlegrounds: Burma, Laos, and Afghanistan. Better known, these three countries might be better known to you as the world's three leading opium producers. Totally by chance, everybody. Come on, please stop being insane. The UN gave the Taliban an attaboy for their opium crackdowns. I can't tell if it's, I'm assuming it's sarcasm, but yeah, dude, isn't that just so sickening? And I know not every, like Vietnam and all these wars weren't purely on heroin and opium, but they played a huge role, folks. I mean, they played a huge, huge role. And then maybe someone would say to you, to what all this facts I just gave you, well, the CIA had to use the lesser of two evils. They had to work with the mafia. They had to work with the drug lords because it's communism. How are we going to stop it? Now, these are some of the most insane statistics I've ever heard. This just blew my mind. Just wait for your minds to be melted here. Oh, good. We got like 2 more pages here. So America's opium addict population was shrinking super low at 2 points in our history. One, the first time, late 40s, post-World War II, and late 70s. Okay, so twice. And we're going to get into this, how low it was. So what did the CIA do? Did they say, yes, we're saving our country? If we didn't grow the poppy, Al-Qaeda would. Hilarious, crazy. All right, so 2 points, and let's just see how low addiction got in America. I mean, this literally almost made me cry. So did the CIA say, yeah, let's finish this out once and for all? No. Instead, they used their covert alliances to surge the opium supply, to revive the dying drug trade and the criminal syndicates that had been wiped out during the World War II era. During World War II, listen to these statistics, guys. Drug abuse hit record lows as heroin purity dropped from 28% in 1938 to 2% during the war and post-war. And I don't know how many of you heroin addicts, when you get a really good bag, and then you go again, you only have $10 and that's all the money you have, and you get a shit bag, you want to cry. I mean, that it's like you want to break down. And this happened in 5 years. This happened in 5 years. But don't worry, everybody. I know you're worried. How are we going to get the heroin back here? Well, within a decade after these insane lows, poppy fields began flourishing again. Heroin refineries were popping all up in Marseille and Hong Kong, and all of this was justification for fighting communism. In 1948, this is how they were rebuilt. And this is the biggest. This is the way you're going to destroy any debate if anybody ever asks you this question. Okay, so like I said, World War II. I'm probably going to I'm going to repeat myself here, but it relates. So it's just so important. So I'm just going to do it. So, pre-1930s, heroin was growing with the Sicilian Mafia, the Corsican Mafia, where Napoleon's from, and in China. And I said China produced 80%. So World War II happens. The Corsican Mafia eviscerated. Why? They allied with the Nazis. Obviously, the Nazis lost. So all the top dogs of the Corsican Mafia, they had to split. They were gone. They were in exile. They were being killed. They were being hunted. The Sicilian Mafia was equally eviscerated. Mussolini, for 2 decades, was slaughtering all of the Sicilian Mafia. This is why the mafia does not like fascism, because Mussolini was shutting down their empire. China, as we already mentioned earlier, 80%, they were shut down because of Mao Zedong and his peasant armies. So all of the major heroin producers were all shut down post-World War. And that's why addiction rates dropped, that's why purity levels dropped. So the CIA, they ally with the Corsican underworld to fight the French Communist Party for control over the Marseille port. Is that because the Communist Party, I'm sure they didn't want to sell heroin. No, they wanted the ports just for legal goods, right? So I can allow this a little to slide, some wiggle room. I can understand. I get that. I can accept that to a degree. And then the Corsicans won because of the CIA, and they used their ports for the next 30 years to export heroin to the United States. And the CIA also ran some operations along the China border, which literally helped create the Golden Triangle of Burma, Laos. It's in Southeast Asia. And the work the CIA did in Turkey and Mexico in the 1970s is a little less clear than the straight up handling all logistics like they did in Southeast Asia. But during this time, the DEA in the 70s, so we're back, baby, right? The CIA, they built up the heroin infrastructure, but in the 70s, wars starting in areas where heroin production is high. So heroin's not looking strong. Okay. It's dropping, less addicts. It's decreasing like crazy. So DEA reduced heroin from 500,000 kilos to 200,000 kilos during the 70s. But in 1979, what happens, guys? Oh, well, not too much, except the CIA operatives in Afghanistan provide a rapid expansion of the heroin trade. And the CIA, working through the Pakistan Inner Service, the Pakistani CIA, which was created by the American CIA, backed Afghani warlords, opium dealers and growers, using CIA military weapons, using CIA logistics, using CIA protection, and they created major drug warlords in Afghanistan, capturing 60% of the American market, breaking the long U.S. drought, and restarting the U.S. addict population. So you could easily make the claim that prohibition was the major force in expansion of the global drug trafficking. Another fun story. This is another wonderful, reassuring, happy story. The Federal Bureau of Narcotics, the FBN, had a founding director, Henry Anslinger. I bet Skeptic knows Henry Anslinger. He focused mostly on the domestic side of the drug world. He didn't operate abroad until after World War II, when he started sending some FBN agents to Europe and the Middle East. Little issue, though, guys, with Anslinger. So he's got some intelligence connections, which kind of is going to compromise your bureau's mission. If your bureau's mission is to curb drug trafficking into your country, well, if you're buddies with CIA guys who are funding and building and creating drug cartels, are you going to arrest your friend? Are you going to rat out your buddies? Oh, you're not. And so Anslinger did for example, Anslinger did not pressure Paris once over its own complicity in the opium trade, the real culprit. And instead, just like they do every goddamn time, who do they blame the opium spike on? Was it on the CIA-backed Marseille ports, the Corsican Mafia, the French government that allowed them to operate unbothered for 30 years? No. It was the communist and Chinese and Vietnamese. They were the opium growers. Sure, Mao's peasant army had wiped out all the opium growers in the 40s, the 50s, but then they changed their mind, right? That's what happened. Anslinger, he's in charge of all narcotics. You know what's weird? the largest area of producing heroin, the Southeast, the Golden Triangle at the time. But he never sent a single one of his Federal Bureau of Narcotic agents to Southeast Asia. The hotspot that at the time of him working was again producing around 70% of the Americans' heroin, opium for heroin. You think that would probably be the first spot you might send some agents to find out what the hell is going on, right? And, by the time he retired in 1962, it was literally the world's opium power. And just for fun, in 1965, 2 years after Anslinger retired, the Bureau of Narcotics compiled a list. Listen to this: a list of 265 drug traffickers, the top drug traffickers of the world. Okay, so right, like we said, 80% coming from the Golden Triangle. Of those 265 top world leading drug warlords, how many Southeast Asian names were on that list? I mean, it's 265. They are 80%. You'd have to be 60 to 80%, right? One. There was one name on the drug list of the top most powerful drug lords, and one was from Southeast Asia, even though, like I said, 80% of the heroin was coming from Southeast Asia. Now you figure that out for me. You tell me how that makes any effing sense. And not a single mention of any of the Burma drug lords, of any of the Hong Kong crime bosses that were helping traffic and smuggle. Anslinger would be forced into retirement by Kennedy, and his bureau was transferred to the Justice Department. The bureau would be replaced by the DEA in 1973 after, shouldn't be too big of a surprise here, after a major corruption scandal that was figured out in the FBN of how many hundreds of their agents were taking bribes. And so the DEA was even more organized they had the global networks. But guess who the DEA reports to and defers to? The CIA. So whenever the DEA investigations would get too close to a CIA quote unquote operative, which is basically just a CIA backed drug lord, they said, you have to stop investigating this, which essentially created enforcement-free drug zones in Asia and in Central America. Gravy, hilarious. Thank you. I know, I love these Illuminati cards. According to that article, under U.S. occupation, opium production up to the 1970s levels was like when the Afghan government was a U.S. puppet. Clearly, Southeast Asians weren't running the show. They were small-time Middle East middlemen at best. What do you mean, in the 70s or prior? Because the 70s is when it slowly started switching to Turkey and the Middle East and Afghan, if that's what you're meaning. But post World War II, pre World War II, and until it was like Mao Zedong, Vietnam War kind of ended that, and it switched over to the Middle East and to Turkey, Corsican, and yeah. So I'm sure that's what you meant. Just yeah. Anyway, okay. And so it's almost comical that the Bureau of the Bureau of Narcotics opens its first office at Bangkok with 3 agents in the 1960s, decades after decades of CIA covert operations with hundreds of operatives, fleets of aircraft, a literal CIA-created opium army in Burma of 12,000 soldiers. So the DEA is supposedly chasing or not chasing the same network that's built by their people they defer things to, the CIA. And so in 1970, Nixon declares war on drugs, Asia specific. He says, that's it. We're taking down the Golden Triangle. A decade later, Ronald Reagan brought the war on the domestic front and the coca eradication. From 1981 to 1994, 80%, this is an insane statistic, 80% of all anti-drug effort, of 80% of the funds went to domestic and eradication of drugs. So only 20% of these billions of dollars spent on drugs was only 20% was spent on the investigation of the actual drug dealers. So now what would make sense would you chop the head off the snake, or would you just try and block your borders and propagandize the public? Right? If you were an honest country that has the capabilities to kill a drug lord that's causing your country harm, CIA doesn't really have a problem with assassinating people, right? So that you can see that makes zero effing sense. And then Clinton continued the same path. $1.3 billion he spent on this thing called Plan Colombia to reduce drug usage by aggressive law enforcement. So the U.S. already has essentially fought 4 drug wars at this point, coming up to Clinton, costing the U.S. taxpayers $175 billion. Through the increase in spending, as mentioned, how did opium do? Did the increase in the billions and billions and billions help? Well, no, not really, because illicit opium supplies grew 5-fold from 1971 to 1999. It would rise to 6,100 tons of heroin, of opium. Isn't that insane, guys? 4 drug wars, 175 billion, and the drug you're after grew 5-fold. 5-fold, right? Isn't that hilarious, Skeptic? The Skeptic says Clinton was doing in Arkansas as the attorney general. Not today, CIA. Hell yeah, Gravy. You and me both, buddy. You and me both. But back when we were doing it, Gravy, I remember, dude, it just switched from like heroin when I was, just got into it, and then, or not just, many years. And then slowly it switched to fentanyl. And I remember when that switch happened, a lot more ODs. And then it's Gravy. I think if you got clean in 2011, this was probably way after you. But after fentanyl, then there came carbofentanyl, which was like 10 times stronger than what fentanyl was. I mean, it was like, I think it was like an elephant opiate, dude. And people were dying. I mean, and that was, again, I think I got clean in like, I don't know how old I am. I don't know, 2017, 2018, but just insane, dude, insane. And that's also, and just to saying this, that's why opium creation isn't as important anymore. That's why we're not really as involved. That's why we pulled out of a lot of these places that were growing opium, because fentanyl, you don't need opium to create fentanyl. So I've researched this because I was always confused. It's like a purely chemical process. You don't need to get the poppies and the opium to create fentanyl. So all you need is just like super labs. Oh, and along with all of this, and I know this is a long show, so I hope you guys are enjoying it. I love this topic, so I'm so thankful for the 12 of you here. You guys are so kind. Skeptic, Gravy. So Fent was coming in at the end, Gravy. So I imagine when you were in it, you were probably big Oxycontins, because I came in Oxycontins. They just removed, like, now they got rid of the 180s or the 80s. You couldn't sniff them anymore. They had the Opanas, the seal, so you couldn't sniff them. But oxycodones were big when I first started. So I bet, Gravy, you were probably around during the heyday of the real hillbilly heroin. But I never was fortunate early enough to start the Oxycontin stage. Oh, good. I'm glad you're learning stuff, because I just find it disgusting. I find it disgusting. Okay. So, and we're almost done, guys. And then we'll do part 2, tomorrow. But so we got a page and a half here. So let's bring this back to the U.S. prison population. I'm sure that's not going to relate to this at all, right? So during this time, so pre-intense drug war, pre-drug wars, the U.S. prison population held at a steady 100 prisoners for every 100,000 people. you insert mandatory sentencing brought to you by lovely Joe Biden and all the progressive, loving, caring people. Thank you, Mouse. Thank you. Mr. Joe Biden, how I love black people. Oh, my son's a crackhead, but if he would have been black and faced my judges that I picked, yeah, they would have locked him up for 30 years for having crack cocaine. But my son, he's the smartest man I know. So mandatory sentencing. By 2002, the prison population in the United States went from 100 to 100,000 to 700 people for every 100,000 people. The U.S. prison population is the largest prison population in the world. The freest country, right? Democracy. Thank God for democracy. Oh, our wonderful republic that all the Democrats love to say, like, oh, what, you don't like democracy? What are you, a fascist? Yeah, democracy's worked real well, hasn't it? It's really showing us how great democracy is, because the world's clearly just getting better and better. Freaking idiots. Jesus. They're so brainwashed, these people. Hey, Joe Biden loves his son like his son loves his crack. And you know what's crazy? I don't know how many of you are ever dabbled, but not enjoyable. Okay, I'm telling you, it makes you sweaty. It's enjoyable for about 5 minutes. So I could see how Hunter blew hundreds of thousands. At least with dope, you buy, you'll die, right? And not that you can't OD on crack cocaine, but I mean, after 5 minutes, you want another one and another one. And you'll just burn through that. It's not enjoyable. It's not enjoyable at all. It's just cheap, but not enjoyable. So it's weird that he picked that. I always find it's funny in the drug world. Gravy probably relates, but like your drug of choice, it's different people. Like my boss, actually, at my work, he was a coke addict, crack addict, coke addict. And his personality is so, I used that every day as well, but I used both of them. But he was just a crack, and him and I are they're former crackhead. They're just like spazzy. They're not all there. I feel like recovering heroin addicts are much more like normal. I don't know. If just go talk to former coke or a stimulant people, and they're very weird. They're all over. Their brains like haven't recovered. I think opiates for them are relatively easy on your brain. Great chance to die and overdose. But I think methamphetamines and stimulants, I think they do a lot more damage. Or maybe it's just the type of people that get addicted to that. I don't know. But anyway, all right. We're almost done. We're so close to done, and I keep getting, because I love this topic. So, U.S. fighting. You got to love the Constitution. And then, what also happens at that time? We institute private prisons, totally by coincidence, I'm sure. So now entrepreneurs, bankers, rich people, they can now make money off of the CIA creating the drug epidemic by paying the politicians to make stringent drug laws and fill up the prisons, which then donate back to the politician. You see this cycle. It's disgusting. And by the time the Iron Curtain fell, destroying the opiate networks that had been used for 40 years, things again had to make a change. But during those 40 years, drugs linked the world. Usage was skyrocketing globally. And if you want to make a boatload of money, you don't legalize something. Prohibition is how you do it, especially if you're protected, you have the weapons, you have the logistical sets up. Yeah, let's make it all legal, because we're the only ones that are going to be able to do this. And if you make any highly wanted good scarce, you're going to make boatloads of cash. In the mid-90s, listen to this, mid-1990s, the price for a kilogram, 2.2 pounds of heroin, which is a lot, guys. Like a gram is like a lot of, I think they would sell it in 0.1 grams. That's a serving. So 0.1. So you have 100 servings of heroin. You know, when you're a real big addict, you're using 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 10 if you're a really high addict. But so 2.2 pounds of this. There's 256 grams in a pound, I believe, if my drug memory serves me right. So, you know, that's 256,000. You're doing the math. I mean, it's a shit ton of it's a shit ton. And then they cut it. I mean, it's a lot of heroin. And so they were, so a kilo in Pakistan was $2,800. And when you brought that to America in the mid 1990s, guess how much that $2,800 kilogram of heroin cost you? $290,000. So you can see why the CIA is getting involved, buddy. Cocaine, the same thing. A kilo in Bolivia, $1,500. How much in the US in the mid 1990s? 11,000. And again, this is before they're cutting it up. Amphetamines, twice the markup. So let's say it's $1,000 to make for a kilo of methamphetamine. You are selling that for $20,000 to $25,000. And it's just hilarious. It's to believe like, oh, you smack this drug dealer, another one pops up. Like Nixon, he pressured Turkey, and in 1972, them and French labs, they closed up all their shops in Marseille, and they did. Heroin dropped off. And then, as we've already said, out of nowhere, Afghanistan heroin starts booming out of control because they have a backup plan. They want to make the public think they're doing something. That's why they do this. And Turkey was literally the U.S. heroin cow, providing 80% for the United States, 6% for the rest of the ROW, rest of the world. And the DIA director just played along or playing dumb. He made some quote like he found it interesting how when Nixon hit Turkey, it was so weird. Mexican production started surging. So prohibition failed, eradication failed, or was it that they were planned to fail? They knew they would fail. And the eradication idea hurt nobody. Didn't hurt the drug dealers. It didn't hurt the CIA. Who did it hurt? It hurt the broke ass, poor rural farmers who can barely feed their families except selling narcotics to loan sharks, to warlords, et cetera. So the U.S., they'd fly over their crops, these poor farmers that they'd loan money against because they have no money. They'd spray their crops, ruin their crops, ruin their borrowed money that they took from a violent, dangerous gangster. And so what would they have to do? They'd have to scramble, get another loan, go more in debt. Family goes more hungry, if not killed, beaten, raped. And they can't go to a bank to get loans. You can't go to a bank, even in a third world country, and say, hey, can I have $1,000? I'm starting a cocaine farm. No, that's not going to work. And so the criminal syndicates, so they had to go to the cocaine buyer or the criminal syndicates to get these loans. And after the U.S. had spent $1.7 billion to eradicate the Colombia cocaine crop production, what do you think happened? Do you think that slowed it down? Within 1 year of all this, of $1.7 billion spent, production rose 25% after spending $1.7 billion. So come hell or high water, people are going to get their drugs, right? And by the late 1990s, the United Nations, this is the late 90s, this is 25 years ago, $400 billion a year industry, drugs, 180 million users, 4.2% of the world's adults, 8% larger the drug trade than the textile, than the steel, than the automotive industries combined. And so this is why, obviously, the CIA needs to be involved. Why these governments and politics? It's one of the largest commodities in the world, 400 billion in the late 90s. So 800 billion, 600 billion today. And you're going to honestly tell me you think that some guy living in a cave in Burma, in a jungle in Vietnam, and in Afghanistan, again in a cave, is making these billions? No. The CIA is. The US government is. And by the rote of prohibition, this huge network of billions pays taxes to police, customs, military, politicians all across the globe. And sometimes it was just like a lone officer on the take. But if not put in check, it spread like wildfire. And before you know it, like a cancer, the whole police force would be working hand in hand with the traffickers. And after this corruption didn't just stay in the opium growing areas, the Bureau of Narcotics formed an essential alliance with the Mafia of heroin syndicates, protecting traffickers, pursuing their rivals, thus allowing an impressive record arrest. So the Sicilian Mafia, they don't like this rival guy. They work with the DEA, the FBN. They say, hey, he's selling heroin too. Arrest him so I get his area as well. Boom. Agent looks good. He made a huge drug bust. Your CI, he's now even richer. He's giving you more money. You get the idea. You get the idea. By 1988, Pakistan heroin was grossing this is 1988, $8 billion annually. And I don't know if you know much about Pakistan. That was more than half of their economy. Half was heroin. Military intelligence, the CIA ran groups, directed traffic to dealers. Top dealers got people elected. Same thing in Mexico. Cartels were paying $460 million in bribes. That was more than the Attorney General of Mexico's budget. And they were grossing $30 billion, 4 times the value of the country's oil's exports. Now, this leads me to this author's, I disagree with this author's point in this. He's saying this creates narco states. I disagree with that. I don't believe that that's true. I believe that the narco cartels, the mafia, these were created by the CIA. El Chapo, I think I may have mentioned this story before. You know, El Chapo's, just listen to this now, going back. And this is in the New York Times. El Chapo, he's been arrested 3 times. He was the leader of the Sinaloa drug cartel, billions of dollars. You know, he escaped prison 3 times. The last time he escaped under a hole on a motorbike tunnel that they created for him. It's like a movie, right? It's a Hollywood movie. He never rolled, according to the New York Times, less than 400 deep, armed to the teeth, et cetera, et cetera. After he escaped that 3rd prison time, Mexico and America said, we're coming for you. Not a single gunshot was fired. Now, if you know the DEA, the FBI, the CIA is knocking at your door, they have you surrounded, you know where you're going, what are you going to do? And you're a billionaire, you've broken countless laws, you're going to be locked up and the key is going to be thrown away. You have 400 men with you. You're not going to fire a single shot. You're the most violent, vicious man, according to the media. You hang people up by their testicles or what have you. You walk in willingly. I was arrested and I didn't even fight the cop. I just kept saying, whoa, what's going on? And he smacked my head against the police door. So you're telling me El Chapo just went in and said, okay, I'm ready to go? That doesn't, no, this is a movie. This is a movie. This is a movie. It's a lie. And if anyone wants to learn more about that, I think the book is The Narco Cartels Do Not Exist. DM me if you want to read the book. I didn't finish it because I understood the premise. And I thought it was the points he brought up was very, very valid. So drug prohibition, it's worked great. It's brought terrorist networks. It's brought violence. It's brought global illicit economy. And the government spends more than $20 to $50 billion a year on counterproductive, ineffective, if not positive policies that help promote drug growth, drug usage, drug production, drug trafficking. So I wanted to get into the next chapter here is the home of Sicily, the home of the mafia. And then we're going to get really big into the Sicilian mafia and the Corsican mafia and the heroin trade. So we'll save that for next show because I got off topic and I've already gone way too long for you guys. I'm probably brutalizing some of you guys. The show's already been going on for almost 2 hours. Pablo Escobar was probably a CIA asset. Absolutely. I 100 bajillion, a manjillion agree with you, Skeptic. Absolutely. Gravy. El Chapo's a CIA regional manager. Hilarious. But yes, agreed. 1,000%. 1,000%. And AD, that's interesting. There were your full, I think 2007. Yeah. So things definitely change these days. I don't think that they would give you that these days, but yeah. That doesn't surprise me. And Skeptic, he spent $3,000 a month on rubber bands to hold his money together. And I think, and what's true and what's not true, but I remember reading how he would eat like 5 million, rats would eat like $5 million of cash of his a year. Oh, and Gravy, the Sicilian part, dude, it's going to blow your mind, bro. Like it's already my favorite. I wish it's just already been 2 hours here and my wife's been patient enough. She's finally done with work. So I'm going to go hang out with her. So I actually have the notes for the next show already, 3 of them done. So I could technically get these done pretty quick here. So I'll really try and work. I'm going to do better getting my notes done and stuff. And I know I always say that, but I'll do better. I promise. I'll get back to once a week. And I may even be doing an odd man show on this, and I didn't get to do my debate that I did in my head for 15 minutes as I was falling asleep last night. So maybe I'll do that on this show. And Skeptic, I hope you're at that show, and Gravy, because I would really love to hear what this author says and what you've read. I'd be interested to see. But yeah, so guys, go follow me at Kojak Podcast as my wonderful LED light, or what's it called? Neon light says behind me. You can support me or follow me at Kojak Podcast on all the socials. And then as everyone knows, oh my God, I never sent I'll post my photo of my floor very soon. I'll post it next time. But if you want to support the show for baby unknown, because my lovely father is going to watch this show, Liv made a baby list, and I'll put the link on the show notes again. And no pressure, guys, at all. I know things are tough, but if you have, even if you want to just get something silly that you think that will make me laugh, and I would love to give our little baby, that's just as sick as well. Maybe a Napoleon baby outfit, or I guess rather a Sun King Louis XIV baby out. We'll see. So anyway, guys, thank you for listening. I am Jack Allen. Skeptic, you have not derailed me ever. Stop it. God, my God. Gravy said derail you in the chat. Dude, you, Gravy, Skeptic, Susan, you guys make the show, dude. Come on. Don't ever say that. You just aggravated me, Skeptic. Come on. I love your input. But so yeah. So I'll get this part 2 out soon. I'll get it done. Liv works Sunday. So I think I can do a show Sunday. And I may be doing this with Odd Man soon. So we'll see. He's excited, or he was really interested about it. And so thank you guys. Thank you for all of you. Much love. God bless. I'll see you soon. And Sunday. I'll see you Sunday, hopefully. All right. Take care. I'm Jack Allen, everybody.